Hey guys, this video has been long overdue, but we're about to start the ActionScript 3 Structure and Statements tutorial. This is part 2 to our ActionScript 3 tutorial series. The first 10 tutorials are based around ActionScript 3, learning the syntax of the language, learning how to program in ActionScript, and then after that, we start using Flashpunk, and we continue learning all the stuff about ActionScript 3 that's available, while also making games using the Flashpunk library. More on that once we get to that tutorial. Alright, so if you haven't already, I suggest you go do the first tutorial. The video quality is pretty terrible, and I never really realized that, so chances are I'll be uploading a better quality version of it. I'm not sure how exactly I'll do that, but I'll try to get one out pretty soon. So today we're going to be looking at structure and statements. So let's start off with the structure. You're probably looking at this file, kind of understanding what's going on, not really. So we're going to talk our way through this. The package right here is basically saying which directory it's in. Alright, directory, that's basically the file system. Okay, so the main directory is source, src. Alright, this is where all your source files go, they're called. It's basically the source code. And you don't need to do this, but if you create a new folder, let's call it assets or something, alright? And then you create a new class in there. A class is a .as file, alright? So let's call it test. Alright, you'll see that the package is now assets because it's inside this folder. And if you move it outside, you'll have to rename this up here, although Flash Develop does now do that by default. So as long as you have the latest version of Flash Develop, you should be able to just do that automatically. Let's test here. So pull this out, open it up. The package assets did not match the file path. New package is generated, and it's just going to save. Alright, so let's look at the rest of this. This right here, the computer completely ignores. Alright, it's inside a comment. There's a few different ways to do comments. This is one way to do it. Another way would be to put 2 slashes and then typing out the comment. This is a comment. The computer will not read this. So the computer completely skips over those. If you were to run your Flash application through a decompiler, the comments wouldn't even exist. All right. When the this right here is the IDE. That's what we're developing in. Flash Develop is an IDE, and when you hit this button, there's this program called the compiler that takes your code and turns it into something that the Flash player will actually understand. So it just pretty much erases all this. Alright, you can do a slash and a asterisk, and it will actually comment out until the end of the file. So you would have to do this, or else you're going to get this. Oh, never mind. Right here is where I want it to go, sorry. Alright, so we just commented out all of that. So now if it were to compile, it would literally just be that. Okay, so comments seem kind of weird, but they're really useful because what you can do is you can put notes to yourself. Alright, you're probably thinking, well, if I'm writing the code, I'm going to know what everything does, so why would I need to put a note? Alright, there's a few different things. You could say, this is a useless class called test that does nothing. Somebody else comes into your code, they can see, oh hey, it does nothing. Alright, when you're writing programs, sometimes they will be thousands of lines of code. Alright, and you're not going to be able to remember everything that goes on inside your program. So using comments is super nice for just jotting down quick notes like, oh hey, this is what this section of code does, this is what I'm trying to do. The reason why we have this number here is to offset the x coordinate or whatever. And then you can also put to-dos, all right? You do // capital TODO, a colon and then space, and let's put delete this file. All right, I saved it, and then down here on tasks, it should show up, but it's not. All right, well, we will figure that out next tutorial because that's not good. All right, so I'm going to delete this, It's all gone. Let's actually get into the programming now. Well, no, we haven't really discussed what this is. Okay, so public class main. All right, this part right here says that everything inside this bracket and this bracket belongs to the class called main. All right, and it extends sprite. So basically, we're creating a class called main that is a sprite. We'll get more into this in later tutorials, but that's basically what this is saying. The imports up here allow you to use different codes, as I covered in the last tutorial. And then public function main is what gets called at the very beginning of your program, all right? When you create this. This is called a constructor. If it's the same name as the class, it's called a constructor, and it gets called when that class is created, and main gets created at the very beginning of the program. All right, I'm gonna make sure that we're in debug mode, by the way. It's really important for what we're about to type. All right, this is called trace, all right? And we're going to use a double quote and type I'm the output. Another double quote, and that line. All right, so now if we run this, you will see that we have our circle from last time. This is a slightly different circle. I was doing a lesson with somebody, and I changed the code a little bit. So if you want to get the codes here, you can pause the video soon. But down here it says, I'm the output, and that's what we just put here. So trace, instead of doing something actually in your program, it puts it down here. All right, so if you're not getting that, chances are you're in release mode. Because if we run it now, release mode doesn't have that. Basically what debug mode does is it runs your application in a debug mode. It has all this extra stuff over here, locals, stack, watch, breakpoints, intermediate. This is all debugging stuff. We're not going to use it too much, but in the future, tutorial maybe like 40 or 50, I'll maybe start working with it a little bit, show you guys what it can do. It's pretty powerful stuff. But all that we're concerned about with debug is I'm the output down here, the trace function. The trace is what we're going to be using today to output stuff, just because we don't know how to render text to the screen yet, so it's much easier just displaying it down at the bottom. We don't have to worry about positioning the text, we don't have to worry about rendering it, we don't have to worry about the font, nothing. It's just perfect. All right, so another thing that we're covering today is statements. And the most basic statement is the if statement. Statements are also sometimes referred to as conditionals, because if the condition is true, it will do what's inside of it, and if it's false, it won't do it. So we're going to write our first conditional right here. So if space, and then do a parenthesis, and then whatever you write in here, it will evaluate, and it'll see if it's true or not. So we can literally just type in the keyword true, because true is true. I did a curly bracket, and then I hit enter, and then Flash Develop by default adds the ending curly bracket. So that's very nice. So if true, trace, the if statement was true. All right. Also, the test project button up here is also hot mapped to F5 on the keyboard. So I'm not going to even click up there anymore. I'm just going to hit F5. All right. So down here it says the if statement was true. So let's say it's not true. It's false. Okay. So you're thinking it's just not going to show it, right? You are correct. So if whatever is in here evaluates to false, what happens in here won't happen. So what if you wanted to do something different? We have what's called the else case. So we do else, curly bracket. You know what? Here, I'm actually going to zoom in a bit so you guys can see my code nice and big. Not a big fan of the font at this size, I should say. All right, so else trace the if statement was false. Uh-oh. Why did we get an error? Oh, that was weird. Sometimes Flash does that. Basically, the Flash Develop runs your program from a special version of Flash Player. That's a debug player, which is, you know, why we're running in debug mode. And sometimes it just glitches out, and if you ever get an error, try running it again, and if it goes away, cool. And if it doesn't, then you probably have an error in your code. So the if statement was false. Now, typically you won't be using the keywords true and false. You might be testing some other variables. So we're going to call a variable isOn. Actually, isOn. Capital O. Now, since we're using capital O, we have to use that capital O every time we reference this. Programming languages typically are case sensitive, meaning that if you capitalize something, you're going to have to capitalize it every single time. All right, we're going to give it a type, and we're going to call it a Boolean. A Boolean is a type of variable that can be either true or false. It's a binary, with false being 0 and true being 1. So we are going to set it to true. All right, and you could literally just replace it with 1, and that would be the same exact thing. So if you're ever doing anything with numbers and you're trying to test conditional, just keep that in mind. Technically, any number, like -5, that's true. 9, that's true. Whatever this number is, that's true. The only number that isn't true is 0, and that's false. All right, so we are going to set this to true. So if isOn, we are going, yeah, the if statement was true. All right. So now, if you set this to false, oops. Yeah, if you ever get this, you hit F6. The if statement was false. So that's pretty easy. So let's say that we want to do something else. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to comment this out, because I don't want this output down here anymore. I want this to be clean. I only want it to show the line that we're about to write. So we're going to create a variable called xpos, which is short for x position. That's not built into the language. It's just a variable that I just named. So if you ever see me naming variables and I give them a very specific name, you can call this whatever you want. You could call this blueberry if you wanted. I'm just calling it x position because if this were a game, I would be using it as my x position. Okay, so var xpos int is equal to 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to test this against another number. So if xpos is equal to 1, oops, all right, trace xpos is 1, or else trace xpos is not 1. So it's 0, so it's going to go down here. However, when we run it, xpos is 1. You're probably thinking, well, Flash is broken. We just found our very first problem with Flash. No. The problem is this equal sign is called the assignment operator, all right? What it does is it takes whatever is on the right and puts it on the left. So when we're using it here, it's taking the 1, putting it in X position, all right? And then X position is 1, so it's basically doing this. So it sets it to 1, X position is 1, and then it checks to see what the value of X position is. It's 1, so that's a true, so let's go in here. So the way that you want to test numbers, and basically any type of variable, is using two equal signs. This is the equality operator. This checks to see if two values are the same. And what some people do is they will actually put the number on the left and then their variable on the right. That way it makes sure that you don't accidentally set your variable to a new thing. Because if you do this, it won't compile. It'll say cannot assign to non-reference value, and then you'll be like, oh my goodness, I messed up. So yeah, now if you run it, xpos is not 1. I think that's about good for today. So we learned about trace, how to output stuff onto the bottom. We did some basic statements, if-else statements. You know what? I want to do one more. All right. So let's do if xpos is less than 0, xpos is negative, or else xpos is positive. All right. Now, if we run it, we're going to get xpos is positive. All right. And it seems that, 0 technically shouldn't be a positive number, but if, of course, we put in a -5, it'll say x is negative, and if we put in a +5, it'll say that it's positive. What if we wanted it to say xpos is 0? All right. Create another else, but you have to do else if. Okay, so you can have as many else ifs as you want. The first one has to be an if, and then you can do else if. And basically, if this one's true, it'll do this and ignore the rest. If it's false, it'll continue to this one. If this one's true, it'll do whatever in here, ignore the rest. If this one's false as well, it'll go here. All right, if there is no if there, it basically says if true. So there's like an invisible one there, kind of. So if xpos is equal to 0, trace xpos is 0. Technically, we could put if xpos is greater than 0. However, every single number that is not 0 and is not less than 0 is going to be greater than 0. Sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart there. So I want to write this one more way. You guys are probably thinking, come on. Really? Okay, so we commented all that out. So what we're going to do is we're going to have two statements. So if, and then an else. Sometimes I put comments in here just to say that, hey, this is empty and I need to write something in here. So if xpos is not equal to 0, all right, this right here is the exclamation mark. It's also the not operator. Basically, it does the opposite of equality together with this. You could also take a Boolean, so let's create a variable is on again. Boolean is equal to true, and then if you wanted to trace is on, it will output true, and trace not is on will output false. True and false. You can do this for any variable, actually. You're able to just trace the value of it right there. Now, if you tried to trace your circle, it's going to get a bit weird. Let's try that. All right, it says object shape. So basically it's saying that there's an object of the type shape and it doesn't know how to put it into words. So it just puts that out. Makes sense. I mean, how would you explain that there's a green circle at position 50, 100 with a radius of 55 and an alpha of 1? If you want to go for it, go for it. Alright, so we're going to delete this. So if x position is not equal to 0, then it's either positive or negative, or else it's 0. So trace xpos is 0. So for in here, we want to check if it's positive or negative. So we'll do what's called a nested if statement. So if xpos is less than 0, trace xpos is negative. Or else trace xpos is positive. So let's, I'm going to actually cut this and put, well, no, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to reassign it down here. So xpos is 5, and now xpos is 0. So if it's 0, it should go here. Xpos is 0. If it's 1, x is positive. And if it's negative 3021, it is negative. Alright, so I'm going to stop the tutorial there. I'm going to try to release a new video every single day for the time being. It's going to be quite a challenge, but I think I can keep it up because these videos only take about half an hour to make. You know, I maybe spend 10 minutes designing what the tutorial is going to be, and then 20 minutes recording and actually doing the tutorial. So that's about it. So tomorrow, the next tutorial will be on moving shapes. Sound pretty exciting? I hope so, because it will be the fundamentals of making a game. Moving shapes is literally all that any type of graphic application is. So if you can do that, you can make a game. We'll catch you tomorrow.